Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhakti Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 5, Narad concludes his teachings to Vasudeva. Text number 12 onwards. Dhanam cha dharmek phalam yato vai jnanam savijnanam anuprashanti griheshu yunjanti kalevarasya mrityum na pashyanti duranta viryam. The only proper fruit of acquired wealth is religiosity, on the basis of which one can acquire a philosophical understanding of life that eventually matures into direct perception of the absolute truth, and thus liberation from all suffering. Materialistic persons, however, utilize their wealth simply for the advancement of the family situation. They fail to see that insurmountable death will soon destroy the frail material body. So again, the question of Karma Kanda, or people who are too materialistic, how they see and how devotees see the life. Those things that come under the control of the proprietor are called dhanam, or wealth. When a foolish person becomes addicted to spending all of his hard-earned money to increase the prestige of his material body and family, he is no longer able to see how death is steadily approaching his own body, as well as the temporary bodies of his family and friends. Mrityu sarvharaschaham. The Supreme Lord appears as all-powerful death, which destroys all material situations. Actually, even in family life, one should use one's wealth for spiritual advancement of oneself and one's family. In the Krishna consciousness movement, there are many religious householders who live a simple, peaceful life and use their wealth for arranging Krishna conscious activities at home and for helping the renounced brahmacharis and sannyasis who are actively preaching Krishna consciousness in public places. Such householders, even those who are not able to dedicate 100% of their energy to Krishna consciousness, gradually acquire a very solid understanding of the spiritual principles of life and eventually become transcendentalists, firmly fixed at the lotus feet of Krishna. Thus, they free themselves from all of the anxieties of conditional life, namely birth, old age, disease, and death. So, as we studied earlier, where it is said the Grahastha should donate 50% of his income in Krishna conscious activities. So, if we are money in service of Krishna, keeping the house as a temple of Krishna and arranging preaching programs and helping in the preaching mission, whichever way we can, howsoever we can, that really helps in making progress in bhakti on the spiritual path. And this is what it said, thus they free themselves from all of the anxieties, slowly. Life without Krishna consciousness is actually poverty. But the poverty-stricken materialist whose intelligence is limited cannot perceive that real wealth is the expansion of consciousness up to the highest level of Krishna consciousness, love of Godhead. Such persons raise their children to be just like animals, having as their only goal false prestige and material sense gratification. Such materialistic householders fear that excessive interest in spiritual life may damage the ambition of their children to acquire false material prestige. Actually, death will smash all of the endeavors and the plans of such spiritually impoverished materialists. If family life and wealth are used for Krishna consciousness, one will learn to discriminate between the external and non-eternal, between eternal and non-eternal, between spirit and matter, between bliss and anxiety, and thus a living entity will become liberated and go beyond mere theoretical practical knowledge to acquire the highest perfectional benediction of eternal Krishna conscious life. But that doesn't mean the children should not get their technical knowledge, technical education, or college degree, or whatever they have to do in the material careers. They should, whatever they can, they should be encouraged. But at the same time, spiritual knowledge, spiritual background, spiritual uplifting is also spiritual upbringing is also important. So they should be aware of both, and then when they come out, there'll be very good examples in the society for everybody else to follow. The word anuprashanti in this verse indicates that by spiritual knowledge, one achieves the most sublime state of eternal peace and bliss, far beyond the dreams of the materialistic conditioned soul. So there's nothing wrong with the material career, nothing wrong. It's just we have to add spirituality to it. That's all. Otherwise, why would Bhakti Vinod Thakur say that? I wish the day when it will come when the High Court judge will go to his courtroom with the Vaishnav Tilak on. So means even the High Court judges should have both the backgrounds, material and spiritual. Yad grhan bhaksho vihita surayas tatha pashora labhanam na hinsa evam vivaya prajaya naratya imam vishuddham na viduh sudharmam. According to the Vedic injunctions, when wine is offered in sacrificial ceremonies, it is later to be consumed by smelling and not by drinking. Similarly, the sacrificial offerings of animals is permitted, but there is no provision for wide-scale animal slaughter. Religious sex life is also permitted, but only in marriages for begetting children and not for sensuous exploitation of the body. Unfortunately, however, the less intelligent materialists cannot understand that their duties in life should be performed purely on the spiritual platform. So that part is what is missing. The less intelligent materialists, in materially they could be very intelligent, but they don't know the spiritual platform. Madhvacharya has given the following statement in regard to animal sacrifices. According to this statement, the Vedas sometimes prescribe animal sacrifice in ritual performances for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord or a particular demigod. If, however, one whimsically slaughters animals without rigidly following the Vedic prescriptions, such killing is actual violence and should not be accepted by any intelligent person. If the animal sacrifice is perfectly performed, the sacrificed animal immediately goes to the heavenly planets of the demigods and forefathers. Therefore, such a sacrifice is not for killing animals, but for demonstrating the potency of Vedic mantras, by the power of which the sacrificial creature is immediately promoted to a higher situation. Or in other places, it is mentioned the animal, because the one it is sacrificed, it's an old animal body, and right away he gets a new animal body or a human body he can get. So it is to test the potency of Vedic mantras and the person who is chanting those mantras. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, has forbidden such animal sacrifice in this age because there are no qualified Brahmins to chant the mantras, and the so-called sacrificial arena becomes an ordinary butcher shop. And in an earlier era, when unscrupulous persons tried to establish that animal killing and meat eating are acceptable by misinterpreting the Vedic sacrifices, Lord Buddha personally appeared and rejected their heinous proposition. This is described by Sri Jayadev Goswami. Unfortunately, the conditioned souls are afflicted by 4 imperfections, one of which is a cheating propensity. And thus they tend to exploit the concessions that the Lord mercifully gives to them in religious scriptures for the gradual purification. rather than follow the Vedic injunctions for simultaneously satisfying the senses and gradually elevating themselves. The conditioned souls reject the actual purpose of such apparently materialistic ceremonies and simply become more and more degraded in the ignorance of the bodily concept of life. Thus, they fall down altogether from the Varnashram system and taking birth in non-violent, non-Vedic society, in violent non-Vedic societies, foolishly presume the small fragments of universal religious principles. As a result, they fall into fanaticism, embracing merely sectarian, dogmatic views of religion. So that's the problem with the religion these days. People don't want to learn the exact what actually the Vedic injunctions mean or the religious injunctions mean, and they just want to churn out their own meaning, and they think that we are doing the greatest service. And that is why when Prabhupada was preaching, he wasn't going into, in the beginning at least, he wasn't going into too much detail. You're not this body, your spirit soul. First, we have to come to this understanding. We're not this bodies, we're spirit souls. And the rest of all the Vedic knowledge is dependent on that. Such unfortunate persons are completely out of touch with their own eternal function in life and consider things to be vastly different than they are in reality. And this is what is going on these days in the name of religion. Ye tvan evam vidos asantaha stabdha sadabhimanina pashuna dhruyanti vishrabdha pretya khadanti techatana. Those sinful persons who are ignorant of actual religious principles yet consider themselves to be completely pious, without compunction commit violence against innocent animals who are fully trusting in them. In their next lives, such sinful persons will be eaten by the same creatures they have killed in this world. So clearly said here. In this next life, they'll be eaten by the same creatures. In this verse, we can clearly see the great discrepancies in those persons who do not surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His law. As stated in the Bhagavatam, Harava Bhaktasya Kuto Mahadrona. Those who do not accept the supremacy of the Supreme Lord gradually become infected with the most sinful propensities that bring, in their turn, terrible suffering upon the non-devotees. In the Western countries such as America, many people proudly proclaim themselves to be most pious religionists and sometimes even prophets or representatives of God. Boasting of their religiosity, such foolish people experience no fear or doubt in cruelly slaughtering innumerable animals in slaughterhouses or on hunting trips for their whimsical sense gratification. In the state of Mississippi, one of the states in America, there are sometimes pig-killing festivals in which entire families enjoy watching a pig cruelly butchered before their eyes. Similarly, a former president of the United States from Texas did not consider any social occasion complete without the slaughtering of a cow. Such persons mistakenly consider themselves to be perfectly observing the laws of God, and due to such arrogant foolishness, lose all touch with reality. When a man is raising an animal for slaughter, he feeds the animal nicely and encourages it to grow fat. Thus, the animal gradually accepts its would-be killer as its protector and master. When the master finally approaches the helpless animal with a sharp knife or gun, the animal thinks, "Oh, my master is joking with me." Only at the last minute does the animal understand that the so-called master is death personified. It is clearly stated in Vedic literature that cruel masters who kill innocent animals will undoubtedly be killed in the next life by a similar process. Very, very sad situation actually. Mamsa bhakshyaitat mutra yasya mamsam ihadmi aham etan mamsasya mamsatvam pravadanti manishina. That creature whose flesh I am eating here and now will consume me in the next life. Thus, meat is called ma ansha, mamsa. So it means mamsa, mayansha, as described by learned authorities. In Srimad Bhagavatam, this grisly fate of animal killers is described by Narad Muni to King Prachin Barhi, who was excessively killing animals in so-called sacrifices. In fourth canto, it is said, O ruler of the citizens, my dear king, please see in the sky those animals which you have sacrificed. Without compassion and without mercy, in the sacrificial arena, all these animals are awaiting your death so that they can avenge the injuries you have inflicted upon them. After you die, they will angrily pierce your body with iron horns. Iron horns. Such punishment of animal killers may take place under the jurisdiction of Yamaraj on the planet of the Lord of Death. In other words, one who kills an animal or eats meat undoubtedly acquires a debt to the living entity who has contributed his body for the satisfaction of the meat eater. The meat eater must pay his debt by contributing his own body to be consumed in the next life. Such payment of one's debt by offering one's own body to be eaten is confirmed in the Vedic literature. And that is why Prabhupada would say, if you want to eat meat, if you're so addicted to eating meat, at least eat the meat of a lower animal. You will suffer only for one lifetime. If you kill cow and eat its meat, one has to remain in the hell for as many lifetimes, not as many years, as many lifetimes as there are hair on cow's body. That is severe, that is terrible suffering. Just for few minutes of taste of the tongue. And there is no taste in the meat itself. There is no taste in it. And that's why when they cook it with the spices, it gets some taste. And if somebody says, I love beef, we just cannot even imagine how many lifetimes he's going to suffer in the hell. And it's not like he must have eaten only once. So this is what is awaiting. And that is where devotees, Srila Prabhupada himself, came into the picture. He just couldn't see all the souls, how they would be suffering in the hell. Okay, whatever they've committed, fine. But why? They should not be suffering. So he gave us this process of bhakti, where Krishna himself says, or in Brahm Samhita also says, Karmani nirdahati kintu cha bhakti bhaja. Krishna says, Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshishyami ma shucha. Just surrender unto me. Mahaprabhu said, just chant. Chant and that's it. You'll be fine. And he showed in the incident of Jagai Madhai how he took all their sins. Once they surrendered, they started chanting and they committed no more sins. Dvishanta par kayeshu swatmanam harimishvara mritake sanubandhe asmin baddha sneha patanti adha. The conditioned souls become completely bound in affection to their own corpse-like material bodies and their relatives and paraphernalia. In such a proud and foolish condition, the conditioned souls envy other living entities as well as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who resides in the heart of all beings. Thus, enviously offending others, the conditioned souls gradually fall down into hell. And because of envy, so much of envy is there in our heart. Materialistic persons express their envy of animals by cruelly killing them. Similarly, the conditioned souls become envious even of other human beings and of the Lord Himself who dwells within everyone's body. They express their envy of God by preaching atheistic science or pseudo philosophy in which they ridicule the fact that everyone is an eternal servant of God. Envious persons express their bitter feelings towards other human beings by creating wars, terrorism, cruel governments, and cheating business enterprises. The sinful bodies of such envious persons are just like corpses. Still, envious persons are enamored with the corpse of their material body and become further fascinated by their children and other bodily extensions. Such feelings are based in false pride. And the basis of everything is envy. Envy, we become envious of others, envious of here in the purpose it says envious of animals, envious of our neighbors, of relatives, co-workers. We're just envious people. Srila Madhvacharya has quoted the following words from Harivansh. The Supreme is called Atma because he is found both in oneself and within others. Some persons become agitated by hearing descriptions of the Supreme Lord, and they openly state that there is no superior living being beyond themselves. Such persons are to be known as demons. By their practical symptoms, they are to be understood as the lowest class of men. And when we are envious of each other, we don't want to serve each other. We want to show off how better I am, and in any way possible, whether it is knowledge or beauty or strength, bodily strength, mental strength, or money, or whatever way. We just want to show off. And this is how the whole life goes on. What's the point? Ye kavalyam samprapta ye chati tasya murtam travargika hi akshanika atmanam ghatiyanti te. Those who have not achieved knowledge of the absolute truth, yet who are still beyond the darkness of complete ignorance, generally follow the threefold path of pious material life, namely religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification. Not having time to reflect on any higher purpose, they become the killers of their own soul. Killer of the soul. I thought Krishna said soul cannot be killed. But if we check the spiritual progress of the soul, that means in a way we are killing the soul. We are not giving the opportunity that we should be to make progress spiritually. Those who are completely in the darkness of ignorance and thus bereft even of the material pious life commit innumerable sinful activities and suffer greatly. Due to such intense suffering, such persons sometimes seek the shelter of the devotees of the Lord, and being blessed by such transcendental association are sometimes elevated to the highest perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness. Those who are not completely sinful experience some mitigation of the miseries of material life and thus develop a false sense of well-being within the material world. Because those who are materially pious generally obtain worldly prosperity, worldly beauty, and a pleasant family situation, they become falsely proud of their position and are not inclined to associate with or accept instructions from the devotees of the Lord. Unfortunately, all material activities, whether pious or impious, are inevitably contaminated by sinful activity. Those who are proud of their piety and do not like to hear about Krishna sooner or later fall down from their artificial position. Every living entity is an eternal servant of Krishna. Therefore, until we surrender to Krishna, our position is actually always impious. So whether we are materially very rich or very opulent, but sooner or later we will commit some impious activities and fall down. Whether this lifetime or following lifetime, who knows? The word akshanika, not having even a moment to reflect, is significant in this verse. Materialistic persons cannot spare a single moment for their eternal self-interest. This is a symptom of misfortune. Such persons are considered to be killing their own souls because by their obstinacy they are preparing a dark future for themselves, from which they will not escape for a very long time. So this is the problem with materialistic persons. Even if they make tremendous progress materially, but if they don't make progress spiritually, then what's the use? Ultimately, what's the use? What did we gain? Krishna had given a wonderful, tremendous opportunity to make spiritual progress. That's why it said, if one gives up his spiritual progress before achieving the lotus feet of Krishna, he'll undoubtedly fall down back into the most unpleasant material situation, even if he has achieved impersonal realization. What to speak of just making progress materially only. So this is how important spiritual progress is. And this is what Bhagavad Dharma is. Navayogendra is basically giving Bhagavad Dharma. What is Bhagavad? This is the most important knowledge one can have and the path one can take to make progress. Otherwise, there is no ultimately what's the gain? Nothing. Okay, so I guess we can stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, related to not this sloka or the discussion we did today, only thing I'm struggling to come out from nagging, और बहुत दिमाग में ये चलता है कि नहीं करनी, पर फिर भी पता नहीं क्यों इन्वॉल्व होता हूँ. मुझे इससे छुटकारा चाहिए और मैं प्रभु से हर बार ये सुबह बोलता हूँ कि मुझे नैगिंग नहीं करनी, आज पूरा दिन किसी का कोई बुराई नहीं करनी, बट फिर भी कहीं कोई टॉपिक छिड़ता है और मैं उसमें एंगेज हो जाता हूँ. तो मुझे इस पर्टिकुलर प्रॉब्लम का आप थोड़ा सा गाइड करें कि कैसे निकलें.
Well, एक चीज तो ये है, just like we have good qualities, everybody else has good qualities. So why just look at negative qualities? Everybody has good qualities, so we can look at those, appreciate those, glorify those. And second thing is, if we still think our mind is going towards their bad qualities, just chant. If we engage more in chanting, then we'll be engaged less in everything else.
Yes, somehow this thought is there, but still when we are having work pressure and in that somebody dependent on somebody's you can say output, or so then in that scenario it's very difficult. because those persons are like walking with you, and somebody is criticizing, and you are also somehow you are also participating. But I don't want to participate there. Though I know that I do not want to participate, but somehow I don't know why this mind is saying कि yes, आप भी जो बोल रहे हैं उनके साथ आप भी जुड़ो, और मैं कुछ हद तक रोकता हूं, बट फिर मैं रोक नहीं पाता, पता नहीं क्यों। और फिर बाद में रियलाइजेशन ये होती है कि नहीं, तूने ये गलती करी, तुझे ये नहीं बोलना चाहिए था।
So that's what, no. So we have to, mind will always keep on playing the games. We have to stop the mind. So even if everybody else is doing, we just bring out the good points in others. Everybody has very good points.
Yes, Prabhuji, I know that.
So
प्रभुजी वहीं तो
yes,
प्रभुजी
yes.
वहीं पे तो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है ना, because I've worked for almost 20 plus years in organization, आपसे बहुत कम है, but फिर भी ये बहुत कोर पार्ट है कि what शशि प्रभु said कि वो entangled हो जाते हैं, वो उसमें खिंच जाते हैं उस कन्वर्सेशन में, और उसका पार्ट धीरे धीरे ऑटोमेटिकली हो जाते हैं। अब अगर आप पॉजिटिव उनके सामने बोलोगे जो नेगेटिव डिस्कशन कर रहे हैं, तो देन दे सेड कि ये कुछ अलग बन रहा है बंदा, ही इज ट्राइंग टू बी स्मार्ट, और ऐसा उनके मन में आ जाएगा, एंड देन दे ट्राई टू कट ऑफ, और आपका फिर कट ऑफ करने लगेंगे चीजों से, यू नो, दे वांट मे बी लाइक जैसे शशि प्रभु ने कहा डिपेंडेंसी रहेगा तो उसको काट
नहीं,
देंगे।
so cut off. So okay, suppose they cut us off, whether from the team or just from the conversation.
From the
They
team
cannot,
itself
nobody
also.
can cut you off from the team because the boss has assigned the team, right? So if you just give the positive output anywhere, everywhere, of anybody, either they'll say, okay, you are out of the conversation. Team, they have to work together. They cannot say, I'm not going to work with this guy because he's too positive. No.
Right.
They themselves will get, I'm also working here, Baba. I'm not away from that. I know the atmosphere.
Yeah. Yes, Prabhu.
At least in government here, at least in US government offices, this thing is completely out. No backbiting, no politics, no leg pulling, nothing. You cannot do it. And if somebody complains to the supervisor, he has to take action against the persons who are spreading these things. Because they don't want negative atmosphere in the office.
Right.
I mean, even politics, you cannot discuss politics in the office. Totally out. Politics and religion, completely out.
प्रभु जी
यही
दो
तो main
चीजें और भी
factors
कर
है।
सकते हैं हम लोग ना इसमें। मैं भी ऑफिस में जैसे थी तो ये एटमॉस्फेयर ही ऐसा होता है कि आप मतलब बोले ना कोयले की खान में जाओ तो दाग लगता है, वैसा वाला हाल हो जाता है। बट ये है कि उस चीज को
Very
अवॉइड
nice
करने के लिए ना
example.
जस्ट लीव दैट प्लेस फॉर अ मोमेंट, कुछ
You
भी
stick
बहाना
to your
बना
point,
के
so you
साइड हो
leave.
जाओ। हाँ, थोड़ी देर के लिए हट जाओ वहां से, जहाँ लग रहा है ना कि यहाँ सब जो है डिस्कशन वो मीटिंग हो रही है, तो हट जाओ वहां से थोड़ी देर के लिए। और
And
सेकेंडली
moreover, अगर लोगों को पता चले कि you are a spiritual person,
हाँ
they themselves will not talk nonsense in front of you.
Yes.
और एक दो बारी मना कर दोगे ना कि नहीं सुनना है या नहीं भैया बस करो, बस बहुत हो गया, वी डोंट वांट दिस, तो अपने आप ही वो चीजें हटनी शुरू हो जाएंगी, लोग ही आपको अवॉइड कर लेंगे उस डिस्कशन से।
हाँ।
मेरे साथ हुआ है ऐसा। एंड सेकंड थिंग प्रभु जी,
और चैंटिंग बहुत बड़ा सोर्स है प्रभु जी, you
हाँ।
rightly said.
हाँ, और ना एक चीज और भी है, सुखमनी
Chanting
साहब में
बहुत बड़ा
लिखा हुआ है ना
source
कि जो जिसके लिए आप जैसे बोलते हो ना, समझ लो कि उसने जो गंद का टोकरा अपने सिर पे रखा हुआ ना, वो आपने रख लिया अपने सिर पे, वो तो फारिग हो गया और आप उसका टोकरा लेके घूम रहे हैं। बहुत बड़ी बात है सुखमनी साहब में, मैंने बहुत टाइम पहले पढ़ी थी, बट आई स्टिल रिमेम्बर कि भैया ये तो फारिग हो गया और मैं इसका टोकरा लेके घूमूंगी अब सारी जिंदगी। तो निंदा तो बहुत मतलब बड़ी अजीब सी मतलब वो है एक चीज की वो जैसे भी खो अवॉइड ही करो।
Yeah.
है ना, किसी भी
What to
रूप में।
speak of work? टेम्पल में इतना ज्यादा होती है।
हाँ, सब जगह प्रभु जी, अपने घर में ही इतना होता है, क्या टेम्पल दूर क्या जाना। कोई भी अपने हिसाब से ना चले बस। वो भी होना
Yep.
चाहिए। इट्स लाइक फिर वो बढ़ती जाती है, आप उसमें इन्वॉल्व हो जाओ ना, फिर वो कहाँ से कहाँ बातें निकलती हैं, कुछ एंड ही नहीं होता उनका।
Yeah. So we just got to be careful to sum up with that.
यस प्रभु जी।
ठीक है? Okay. So you all have a safe, wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Ram.
हरे कृष्णा,
हरे कृष्णा, जय श्री